Sirens didn't blare when Bella's future almost collapsed. Instead, it was the harsh, unforgiving red beep of a boarding scanner. 19-year-old Bella, a black college student in a faded hoodie, stood paralyzed at JFK's departure gate. Brenda, a veteran gate agent with a patronizing smirk, gripped his first-class ticket like stolen contraband. "There is absolutely no way this belongs to you," she announced, projecting her voice so the wealthy passengers behind him could scoff. Security officers were already marching over, hands on their radios. Humiliation choked him, but just before they could grab his arms, a chillingly calm voice echoed through the terminal, a voice belonging to the billionaire CEO who was about to permanently dismantle Brenda's entire life. The sprawling expanse of Terminal 4 at JFK International Airport was a chaotic symphony of rolling luggage, crackling PA announcements, and the dull roar of 1,000 different conversations. It was 6:15 a.m. on a crisp Tuesday morning, the air smelling faintly of stale coffee and expensive duty-free perfume. Sitting in a slightly worn leather chair near Gate B22 was Bella Hayes. At 19 years old, Bella was operating on less than 3 hours of sleep, fueled entirely by adrenaline and a cheap corner store energy drink. He was dressed for comfort, a pair of gray fleece sweatpants, immaculately clean white sneakers, and a slightly oversized navy blue hoodie bearing the crest of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He wasn't a student there, not yet, anyway. He attended a community college in Brooklyn, working night shifts at a fulfillment center to pay for his mother's medical bills and his own tuition. But today was different. Today was the culmination of 3 years of obsessive, sleepless nights spent coding in his cramped bedroom. Bella had recently developed an algorithmic compression software that had caught the attention of several major tech conglomerates. One of those conglomerates, a Seattle-based titan, had invited him to their headquarters for an exclusive, final round pitch. The company had handled the travel arrangements. When Bella opened his email the night before and saw the boarding pass, he had nearly dropped his phone. It wasn't just a ticket. It was a first-class seat on Meridian Airlines' flagship transcontinental route. It was a level of luxury Bella had only ever seen in movies. He had spent 20 minutes just staring at the words Group 1, First Class printed boldly across the digital pass. As he sat in the terminal, Bella couldn't help but feel a profound sense of imposter syndrome creeping up his spine. The gate area designated for Flight 409 to Seattle was heavily populated by a specific demographic. There were men in sharply tailored charcoal suits typing furiously on sleek laptops, women in designer trench coats sipping artisanal lattes, and older couples wearing Rolexes that cost more than Bella's entire neighborhood block. Amidst the sea of Armani and Louis Vuitton, Bella, a young black man in a hoodie and sweatpants, stuck out like a sore thumb. He tried to keep his head down, reviewing his presentation notes on his battered tablet, but he could feel the eyes. It wasn't outward hostility, not at first. It was the subtle, lingering glances, the slight shifting of designer handbags when he stood up to stretch his legs, the tight, thin-lipped smiles from the older passengers when they accidentally made eye contact. Bella was used to it. Growing up in a marginalized community and navigating predominantly white academic tech spaces had forced him to develop a thick skin. He knew the drill. Keep your voice low, keep your hands visible, and never give anyone a reason to doubt your right to exist in a space. Behind the podium at Gate B22 stood Brenda Carmichael. Brenda was a veteran gate agent for Meridian Airlines, a woman in her late 40s with stiff, hairspray-lacquered blonde hair and a uniform that was pressed to razor-sharp perfection. She wore a golden name tag that proudly displayed her 15 years of service. To the casual observer, Brenda was the picture of corporate efficiency. She greeted the platinum-tier business travelers by name, laughing at their dry jokes and offering them pre-flight lounge passes with a bright, pearly smile. But Bella had been quietly observing her for the past 30 minutes, and he had noticed a distinct pattern. When a young, white college student in pajama pants and a backwards cap had approached her desk to ask for a seat change, Brenda had been warm, maternal, and accommodating. "Let me see what I can do for you, sweetheart," she had cooed. 10 minutes later, a black family of 4 had approached the desk to check on their stroller tag. Brenda's demeanor had instantly frosted over. Her smile vanished, replaced by a rigid, impatient scowl. "The tag is on the handle, ma'am. You need to step aside to clear the lane," she had snapped, her tone dripping with unearned authority. Bella swallowed hard, a knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. He checked his watch. 6:45 a.m. The digital display above the gate flashed. Flight 409 to Saddle, boarding soon. He took a deep breath, telling himself it was just paranoia. He had a legitimate ticket. He had every right to be here. He closed his tablet, stuffed it into his worn canvas backpack, and stood up as the PA system crackled to life. "Good morning, passengers of Meridian Airlines Flight 409. Brenda's voice echoed through the microphone, saccharine and overly polished. "We are now beginning our boarding process. At this time, we invite our first-class passengers, as well as our Meridian Platinum Elite members, to board through the priority lane." The cluster of bespoke suits and designer luggage began to naturally funnel toward the blue-carpeted priority lane. Bella hoisted his backpack onto his shoulder and merged into the line. He ended up standing behind a tall, silver-haired executive who was loudly complaining into a Bluetooth earpiece about a delayed merger. As Bella shuffled forward, he saw Brenda systematically scanning boarding passes. "Beep. Welcome back, Mr. Henderson. Beep. Enjoy the flight, Mrs. Gable." Then, Brenda's eyes flicked past the silver-haired executive and landed on Bella. Even from 10 feet away, Bella saw the physical shift in her posture. Her shoulders squared, her jaw set. The practiced, welcoming smile evaporated instantly, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated suspicion. Her eyes raked over his faded MIT hoodie, traveled down to his sweatpants, and settled firmly on his face. The line moved forward. The executive in front of Bella handed over his phone. The scanner chimed a cheerful green beep, and he walked down the jet bridge. Bella stepped up to the podium, offering a polite, practiced smile. He held out his phone, the screen brightly displaying the QR code of his first-class boarding pass. Brenda didn't even look at the phone. She looked at Bella, her eyes cold and hard, blocking the scanner with her hand. "Excuse me," Brenda said, her voice loud and cutting through the ambient noise of the terminal. "This line is for first-class and Platinum Elite members only. Main cabin boarding hasn't been called yet. You need to step out of the line." The immediate vicinity around Gate B-22 went entirely silent. It was that specific, suffocating kind of silence that occurs when a public social contract is abruptly broken. The passengers lingering in the main cabin lines paused. A few businessmen who had already passed the podium stopped and looked back. Bella felt a sudden, uncomfortable rush of heat flush his cheeks. He kept his voice deliberately calm, soft, and respectful, acutely aware of the optics of the situation. "Good morning," he said, holding his phone slightly higher. "I am in first class. My ticket is right here." Brenda let out a short, breathy scoff, a sound dripping with condescension. She didn't move her hand from the scanner. "Sir, I know what first-class tickets look like. I also know that our system frequently experiences glitches with third-party booking apps. I'm going to need you to step aside so I can board the actual priority passengers." "It's not a glitch, ma'am," Bella replied, his heart beginning to hammer against his ribs. He refused to break eye contact, though every instinct told him to shrink away from the confrontation. "The ticket is valid. It was booked directly through Meridian's corporate portal. If you just scan the QR code—" "I am not scanning anything until I verify your identity," Brenda interrupted sharply, stepping out from behind the podium. She crossed her arms, physically blocking his path to the jet bridge. She was shorter than Bella, but she weaponized the space between them, leaning in aggressively. "May I see your ID?" Bella nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his New York State driver's license, handing it over. Brenda snatched it from his fingers. She held it up to the harsh fluorescent lights of the terminal, scrutinizing it as if searching for a forged watermark. She looked from the plastic card to Bella's face, then back again. Bella Hayes, she read aloud, drawing the syllables out as if tasting something sour. She walked back behind the podium and began typing furiously on her keyboard. "And do you have the credit card used to purchase this ticket, Mr. Hayes?" "No," Bella answered honestly. "I didn't purchase it. The company I'm interviewing with, Vertex Innovations, bought it for me." A collective murmur rippled through the onlookers. A woman standing at the front of the Group 2 line let out a loud, theatrical sigh, checking her watch. "Can we just move this along?" she complained to her husband. "People clearly don't know how airports work." Brenda smiled a tight, triumphant smile. "So you didn't buy the ticket. You don't have the purchasing card. And you expect me to believe that a major corporation booked a teenager in sweatpants a $5,000 first-class seat?" "It's the truth," Bella said, his voice tightening. The humiliation was evolving into a desperate, trapped panic. "Please, just look at the booking reference number. It's tied to my name. My ID matches the name on the ticket. That is all the TSA and airline policy requires." "Do not quote airline policy to me," Brenda snapped, her voice rising in volume. She slammed her hand down on the counter. "I have been working for Meridian for 15 years. We have strict protocols regarding credit card fraud and ticket theft. We get people like you trying to scam their way into premium cabins all the time. People like you." The words hung in the air, heavy and loaded with undeniable implication. Bella felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. He looked around. Dozens of eyes were fixed on him. Some looked annoyed, others looked pitying, but none of them stepped forward. He was entirely alone on an island of public scrutiny. "I am not scamming anyone," Bella said, his voice trembling slightly before he forced it steady. He took a step back, maintaining a non-threatening posture. "If you scan the pass, the system will validate it. If there is a problem, call your supervisor." "I don't need my supervisor to spot a fraudulent ticket," Brenda sneered. She grabbed her handheld radio from her belt. "In fact, I'm not calling my supervisor. I'm calling security. You are holding up my flight, and you are acting suspiciously." Before Bella could even process the escalation, Brenda pressed the button on her radio. "Dispatch, this is Gate B22. I need a security detail immediately. I have an uncooperative passenger attempting to board with a fraudulent high-value ticket. He is refusing to step aside." "Copy that, B22. Officers are en route," a static voice replied. "Wait, what?" Bella gasped, the reality of the situation crashing down on him. A 19-year-old black man in a hoodie having airport security called on him was not just an inconvenience. It was inherently dangerous. The statistics flashed through his brilliant, analytical mind. Things could go wrong in an instant. A misunderstood gesture, a raised voice. "I'll step aside," Bella said quickly, backing away from the podium entirely. "I'm stepping out of the line. Just, please, scan the ticket. You have my ID." "It's too late for that," Brenda said, pointing a manicured finger at him. "You stay right there. If you try to run, it will only make things worse for you." She turned to the next passenger in line, a white man in his 50s wearing a golf polo, and her face instantly transformed back into the saccharine, pearly smile. "I am so sorry for the delay, sir. Some people just don't understand that actions have consequences. Boarding pass, please." The scanner beeped a cheerful green. The man gave Bella a sidelong glance of disdain before walking down the bridge. Bella stood paralyzed near the heavy glass windows overlooking the tarmac. His chest heaved. Tears of profound frustration and helplessness pricked the corners of his eyes, but he aggressively blinked them back. He refused to cry. He pulled out his phone, his hands shaking so badly he could barely unlock it, desperately trying to find the contact number for his recruiter at Vertex Innovations. It was 6:50 a.m. in New York. It was 3:50 a.m. in Seattle. No one was going to answer. Within 2 minutes, the heavy thud of boots announced the arrival of airport security. 2 officers, both heavily built and wearing stern expressions, pushed their way through the crowd. "What seems to be the problem here, Brenda?" The lead officer, a man whose badge read Jenkins, asked as he approached the podium. His hand was resting casually near the utility belt at his waist. "This individual," Brenda said, pointing at Bella as if he were a stray dog that had wandered into a sterile hospital, is attempting to board first class using a ticket that clearly does not belong to him. He cannot produce the credit card used for purchase, and he became combative when I questioned him. Officer Jenkins turned his gaze slowly to Bella. He didn't see a terrified college student. He saw a threat. He stepped toward Bella, invading his personal space, his posture rigid and commanding. "All right, son. Put your phone away and keep your hands where I can see them," Jenkins barked. "We're going to take a little walk to the holding office to sort this out. And if I find out you stole someone's mileage account, you'll be leaving this airport in the back of a squad car." Bella felt his world tilt on its axis. The holding office meant missing the flight. Missing the flight meant missing the final interview. The opportunity that was supposed to lift his family out of debt, the job that validated every sacrifice his mother had made, was dissolving in front of him because of a gate agent's prejudiced assumption. "Officer, please," Bella pleaded, his voice cracking. He held his hands up, palms open, showing empty space. "I didn't steal anything. If you just let me pull up the confirmation email from Vertex Innovations." "I said put the phone away," Jenkins warned, taking another step forward and grabbing Bella by the upper arm. The grip was shockingly tight, the physical contact sending a jolt of raw panic through Bella's system. "Don't make me tell you again. Let's go." The crowd watched in silence. Some whispered behind their hands. Others openly recorded the interaction on their smartphones, eager for a viral moment. Bella squeezed his eyes shut, preparing for the inevitable, humiliating march through the terminal. "Take your hand off that young man." The voice was not loud. It didn't need to be. It cut through the ambient noise of the airport with the razor-sharp precision of a diamond blade. It carried a timbre of absolute, unquestionable authority that caused Officer Jenkins to freeze instantly, his grip on Bella's arm loosening. From the entrance of the exclusive Meridian Platinum Lounge, situated just 50 yards from Gate B-22, stepped a man. He appeared to be in his late 50s, tall and impeccably groomed. He wore a bespoke, midnight blue suit that draped perfectly over his frame, lacking a tie but exuding an effortless, terrifying sort of wealth. His silver hair was neatly swept back, and his steel-gray eyes were fixed entirely on the unfolding scene. Brenda looked up, an annoyed scowl forming on her lips. "Excuse me, sir. This is an active security situation. Please return to the lounge or step into the boarding lane." The man ignored her completely. He walked with a deliberate, measured pace, the crowd naturally parting for him as if repelled by a magnetic force. He stopped right next to Bella. He looked at Officer Jenkins' hand, which was still awkwardly hovering near Bella's arm. "I said," the man repeated, his voice dangerously soft, "take your hand off him." Jenkins, sensing the shift in the atmosphere and the undeniable aura of power radiating from the stranger, pulled his hand back completely. "Sir, we have a report of a fraudulent ticket." "There is no fraudulent ticket," the man stated calmly. He turned to look at Bella, and for the first time since he had arrived at the airport, Bella saw genuine warmth in someone's eyes. "Bella Hayes, isn't it?" Bella, stunned and struggling to process the sudden shift in reality, could only nod mutely. "I thought I recognized you from the dossier." The man smiled gently. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these utterly disgraceful circumstances. I was hoping to introduce myself on the flight." Brenda slammed her hand on the podium again, her face flushed with anger. "Sir, you cannot interfere with an airline security protocol. I don't care if you know this boy. He cannot prove he purchased that ticket." The older man turned slowly to face Brenda. The warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by a chilling glacial stare. He walked up to the podium, placing both of his hands on the high counter, leaning in just enough to force Brenda to instinctively lean back. "He cannot prove he purchased it," the man said, his tone conversational but dripping with venom, "because he didn't purchase it. I did." A gasp rippled through the gathered crowd. Brenda blinked, her confident facade cracking for a fraction of a second before she scrambled to rebuild it. You bought it?" she scoffed defensively. "And who exactly are you? You can't just claim to buy tickets for random strangers and bypass TSA security checks. Let me see your ID and the purchasing card. My name is William Danvers, the man said simply. The name meant nothing to Bella. It seemed to mean nothing to the crowd either, but behind the podium, another gate agent, a younger woman working the adjacent computer terminal, suddenly froze. She stopped typing, her head snapping up to look at the man. All the color drained from her face. Brenda, oblivious to her coworker's panic, crossed her arms. William Danvers. Great. Do you have the corporate card used for the transaction, Mr. Danvers? William Danvers reached into the inner breast pocket of his tailored suit jacket. He didn't pull out a wallet. He didn't pull out a credit card. Instead, he pulled out a solid metal ID badge. It wasn't the standard white plastic badge worn by the flight attendants or the gate agents. It was a heavy, brushed titanium card with a deep navy blue border. At the very top, the Meridian Airlines logo was embossed in silver. Beneath the logo, in bold, stark lettering, read, William Danvers, Chief Executive Officer, Meridian Aviation Group. Danvers dropped the heavy metal badge onto the counter. It landed with a loud, dense clack that seemed to echo in the sudden, dead silence of the terminal. I don't have the corporate card on me, Brenda, Danvers said quietly, leaning closer to the microphone so his voice carried across the gate. But seeing as I own the airline, the planes, the corporate portal the ticket was booked through, and the desk you are currently leaning against, I would suggest you take my word for it. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a vacuum, of all the oxygen being violently sucked out of the room. Brenda looked down at the titanium badge. Her eyes dilated in absolute, unadulterated horror. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked like a fish gasping for air on dry land. The smug, condescending sneer she had worn just moments prior was wiped away, replaced by the pale, trembling realization of catastrophic ruin. Officer Jenkins, standing next to Bella, went rigid. He swallowed hard, immediately stepping 2 paces back, suddenly wishing he could turn invisible. The crowd, realizing they were witnessing a monumental shift in power, held their collective breath. I. Brenda stammered, her voice a pathetic, high-pitched squeak. Mr. Danvers, sir, I was just following security protocol. Protocol? Danvers asked, raising an eyebrow. He picked his badge back up and slipped it into his pocket. I wrote the protocols, Brenda. In fact, I completely revised them 3 years ago, specifically to eliminate the kind of biased, discriminatory profiling I have just watched you perform for the last 10 minutes. He gestured toward Bella. This young man is a guest of Vertex Innovations, a company on whose board of directors I happen to sit. He is flying on a ticket booked through my personal executive account. And yet, instead of scanning his valid boarding pass, you humiliated him, denied him service, and called armed security to intimidate him. Danvers looked at his luxury watch, then back up at Brenda, his expression devoid of any mercy. The flight departs in 20 minutes, Danvers said, his voice ringing with absolute finality. Step away from the keyboard, Brenda. You're done. The air in Terminal 4 felt as though it had been pulled into a vacuum. For a grueling, agonizing 10 seconds, the only sound at Gate B-22 was the distant, muffled roar of a Boeing 777 taxiing on the runway outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Brenda Carmichael, a woman who had spent the last 15 years wielding her meager gate authority like a tyrant's scepter, looked as if she were about to physically collapse. The blood had entirely drained from her face, leaving her heavily applied blush looking like garish paint on a mannequin. Mr. Danvers, Brenda finally choked out, her voice trembling so violently it cracked. Her hands fluttered over the keyboard, suddenly unsure of where to place them. Please, sir, I didn't know. I was only trying to protect the airline's assets. We had a memo from corporate just last week about third-party ticket spoofing. Do not insult my intelligence by citing a memo you clearly did not read, Brenda. William Danvers interrupted, his voice a low, terrifying rumble that carried perfectly over the counter. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. True power never has to shout. The memo distributed by Richard Sterling in our cybersecurity division specifically detailed a software vulnerability in third-party vendor systems, not our internal executive portal. Furthermore, that memo explicitly stated that passenger verification was to be handled through standard ID checks, not public interrogations, and certainly not by profiling. Brenda swallowed, a thick, audible gulp. She looked wildly around the terminal, searching for an ally, a sympathetic face, anything. She found nothing. The wealthy businessmen who had been rolling their eyes at Bella minutes prior were now staring at their shoes or furiously scrolling on their phones, utterly terrified of catching the CEO's eye. The woman who had complained about Bella holding up the line was now pretending to be deeply fascinated by a digital departure board. "I have a perfect record," Brenda pleaded, tears finally welling in her eyes, smearing her mascara. The arrogant sneer was gone, replaced by the desperate, naked fear of a woman watching her pension and her livelihood evaporate in real time. 15 years, Mr. Danvers. I have a mortgage. I have a daughter in college. You can't just fire me on the spot over a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Danvers repeated, leaning back and resting his hands casually in the pockets of his tailored trousers. The glacial coldness in his eyes didn't thaw. "A misunderstanding is printing a boarding pass for the wrong row. A misunderstanding is checking a bag to Portland, Maine instead of Portland, Oregon. What you did here was a calculated, discriminatory execution of bias. You looked at a young, brilliantly talented black man in a hoodie, and you decided he didn't belong in your first class. You assumed he was a thief." Danvers turned his gaze to the younger gate agent, who was still frozen at the adjacent computer. He read her name tag. "Amanda, isn't it?" "Yes, Mr. Danvers," Amanda stammered, standing up straight. "Amanda, I need you to step over to this terminal, log Brenda out of the system, and take over the boarding process for Flight 409 immediately," Danvers ordered smoothly. "And then I want you to call Sarah Higgins in HR. Tell her I am personally authorizing an immediate suspension pending termination for Brenda Carmichael, effective 0700 hours. "Yes, sir," Amanda said quickly. She practically sprinted the 3 feet to the main terminal. Brenda let out a ragged sob, taking a step back from the desk as if she had been physically struck. "You're ruining my life," she cried out, her voice echoing in the concourse. "My union rep, Arthur Pendleton. He won't let you do this. You can't bypass the union grievance process." Danvers let out a dry, humorless chuckle. It was a sound entirely devoid of warmth. "Call Arthur, please. While you have him on the phone, ask him about the internal audit report that crossed my desk 3 weeks ago. The one detailing 3 separate complaints filed against you in the last 12 months by minority passengers claiming harassment and undue scrutiny at this exact gate." Arthur managed to bury those complaints in bureaucratic red tape. "I assure you, Brenda, I am the CEO of this airline. I do not have red tape. You are done here. Turn in your badge and clear out your locker." The brutal, swift execution of corporate justice left the crowd stunned. The immediate karma was absolute. Brenda, weeping openly now, unclipped her gold name tag with shaking fingers, dropped it on the keyboard, and walked away, disappearing into the sea of travelers, stripped of all her artificial power. Danvers wasn't finished. He turned slowly, his sharp gaze locking onto Officer Jenkins, who was sweating profusely underneath his tactical uniform. Jenkins immediately stiffened, his hand flying away from his utility belt to rest firmly at his sides. "And you," Danvers said quietly. "Sir, I was dispatched to a Code 4. Jenkins started, his voice a defensive, rapid-fire burst. "The gate agent reported a combative suspect committing felony fraud. I was following standard Port Authority intervention protocols. You walked up to a completely compliant teenager, escalated the physical tension without asking a single investigative question, and put your hands on him." Danvers corrected him, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. "I watched the entire interaction from the lounge. You didn't assess the threat. You brought the threat. I know Director Thomas Kincaid over at Port Authority very well. I play golf with him on Sundays. I will be making a phone call when I land in Seattle. I suggest you go back to your security office and start writing a highly accurate incident report, officer, Because my legal team will be reviewing it. Jenkins swallowed hard. His face flushed a deep, embarrassed crimson. Understood, sir, he clipped out, giving a terse nod before spinning on his heel and fast walking away from the gate, eager to escape the suffocating humiliation. With the hostile elements removed, the atmosphere at Gate B-22 shifted entirely. Danvers turned back to Bella. The terrifying CEO vanished, and the warm, grandfatherly businessman returned. Bella was still standing near the windows, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. His hands were shaking, gripping the strap of his canvas backpack so tightly his knuckles were white. The whiplash of the last 10 minutes, from facing imminent arrest to watching the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar airline dismantle his oppressors, left him entirely speechless. Bella, Danvers said softly, stepping closer, careful not to invade the young man's personal space. Take a breath, son. It's over. You're safe. Bella exhaled a long, shaky breath he didn't realize he had been holding. He looked at the towering executive. I don't know what to say. Thank you, sir. If you hadn't walked out of that lounge. You don't need to thank me for basic human decency, Danvers said firmly, placing a reassuring hand on Bella's shoulder. I am profoundly sorry you had to experience that. This company is supposed to represent the best of aviation hospitality, and today we failed you miserably. But I promise you, that woman will never scan another boarding pass for Meridian again. Now, I believe we have a flight to catch, and a very important interview to prepare you for, shall we? Bella nodded, a genuine, albeit shaky, smile finally breaking through his stoic expression. Yes, let's go. Amanda! Danvers called out to the new gate agent, who was wide-eyed and terrified. Mr. Hayes and I will be boarding now. Please proceed with Group 1. As Bella and William Danvers walked side by side down the blue-carpeted priority lane, the crowd watched them go. Nobody complained. Nobody checked their watches. The man in the golf polo who had sneered at Bella earlier completely averted his eyes, deeply ashamed. Bella handed his phone to Amanda. The scanner chirped a bright, cheerful green beep. Welcome aboard, Mr. Hayes, Amanda said, her voice shaking slightly but incredibly polite. Have a wonderful flight. The transition from the fluorescent-lit, chaotic terminal to the jet bridge felt like crossing a threshold into another dimension. The heavy thrum of the airport faded, replaced by the low, powerful hum of the Boeing 777's auxiliary power units. Bella walked down the sloped, carpeted tunnel, his worn sneakers silent against the floor, walking shoulder to shoulder with one of the most powerful men in the Pacific Northwest. As they stepped through the heavy metal door of the aircraft, the contrast hit Bella like a physical weight. Meridian Airlines' international first-class cabin was a masterpiece of modern luxury. It didn't look like an airplane. It looked like a high-end private club in Manhattan. The air smelled of fresh linen, subtle citrus, and expensive leather. There were no cramped rows. Instead, there were 12 individual, enclosed suites, each featuring a wide, plush seat that could fold completely flat into a bed, a massive mahogany dining table, and a 3.2-inch entertainment screen. Standing at the entryway was the lead flight attendant, a striking woman in a pristine Navy uniform with a silk scarf tied neatly around her neck. Her name tag read Gwendolyn Pierce. Good morning, Mr. Danvers. It's an honor to have you flying with us today. Gwendolyn smiled warmly, entirely unfazed by the CEO's presence. She clearly knew him well. Good morning, Gwen, Danvers smiled back. This is my guest, Bella Hayes. He'll be sitting in 2A. I'm in 1A. I'd like you to ensure he gets whatever he needs. He's had a remarkably stressful morning. Gwendolyn's eyes shifted to Bella. Unlike Brenda, there was no hesitation, no scanning of his hoodie, no judgment. Her smile widened, genuine and welcoming. It is a pleasure to have you on board, Mr. Hayes. Let me show you to your suite. Can I get you anything to drink before takeoff? Champagne, sparkling water, perhaps some fresh orange juice? Just water, please. Thank you, ma'am, Bella said, feeling a rush of overwhelming gratitude. He was guided to Suite 2A. Bella slid into the massive leather seat, sinking into the plush cushioning. He placed his battered canvas backpack on the polished mahogany side console. It looked hilariously out of place amidst the luxury, but for the first time that morning, Bella didn't care. He belonged here. His hard work, his endless nights of coding, his sacrifices, they had earned him this seat, regardless of what a bitter gate agent thought. A moment later, William Danvers settled into Suite 1A, situated diagonally across the aisle, allowing them to speak easily over the low partition. Gwendolyn brought Bella a crystal glass of iced water and a warm, lavender-scented towel. "Settle in, Bella," Danvers said, unbuttoning his suit jacket. "It's a 6-hour flight. The Wi-Fi is complimentary, and the food is actually edible up here." Bella wiped his hands with the warm towel, the soothing scent of lavender finally calming his racing heart. He looked over at the CEO. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a profound curiosity. "Mr. Danvers," Bella began, his voice steadying. "I don't mean to be disrespectful, but why did you intervene? I mean, I know you saw what was happening, but you're the CEO. You could have just let security handle it, or told her to scan the ticket and walked away. You didn't have to do all of that." Danvers leaned back in his seat, steepling his fingers together. He looked out the oval window at the tarmac for a moment before turning back to Bella. His expression was serious, devoid of the corporate polish. "Bella, I didn't intervene just because it was the right thing to do, although that alone is reason enough," Danvers said quietly. "I intervened because I know exactly who you are, and I know exactly what you've built. And quite frankly, Meridian Airlines and Vertex Innovations cannot afford to lose you to a competitor because of the bigotry of a mid-level employee." Bella blinked, taken aback. "You know what I built? You mean the compression algorithm?" "I don't just know about it," Danvers smiled, a gleam of intense business acumen in his eyes. "I've seen the beta test results. Last week, Dr. Harrison Croft, the Chief Technology Officer at Vertex, brought your code to an emergency board meeting. Vertex has been trying to solve a catastrophic latency issue in their global logistics tracking software for 3 years. They threw millions of dollars at MIT and Stanford postgrads, and nobody could crack it without compromising the data integrity." Danvers leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees, his voice dropping to a confidential murmur. "And then, Harrison finds a 19-year-old community college student in Brooklyn who built a dynamic parsing algorithm in his bedroom that compresses live tracking data by 72% with 0 packet loss. Do you understand the magnitude of what you've created, Bella?" Bella swallowed hard. He knew his code was good. He knew it was efficient. But hearing it validated by a billionaire CEO in the first-class cabin of a 777 was surreal. I noticed a redundancy in standard TCP/IP protocols when handling geolocational data. I just wrote a script to bypass the bloatware." "You didn't just write a script," Danvers corrected him firmly. "You revolutionized real-time data transfer. Meridian Airlines currently pays $60 million a year to satellite providers to track our global fleet in real time. With your algorithm integrated into our systems, Vertex estimates we can cut that cost by $40 million annually. And we aren't the only ones. Every shipping company, every airline, every logistics firm on the planet will want this technology." The plane shuddered slightly as the tug engaged, slowly pushing the massive aircraft away from the gate. The seatbelt sign chimed overhead with a soft ding. "Vertex isn't flying you out to Seattle for an interview, Bella," Danvers revealed, the ultimate twist dropping like an anvil. "You already have the job, if you want it. What they are actually doing today is presenting you with an acquisition offer. They want to buy the exclusive licensing rights to your algorithm. And as a board member, I am personally heavily invested in making sure you sign with us, and not with our rivals in Silicon Valley." Bella's jaw literally dropped. The room spun slightly, and it had nothing to do with the movement of the plane. An acquisition offer, licensing rights. The numbers flashing through his head were staggering. It wasn't just enough to pay off his mother's medical debt. It was enough to change the trajectory of his entire family's bloodline. "This morning," Danvers continued, his tone softening, "when I saw that woman humiliating you, I didn't just see a young man being profiled. I saw a brilliant mind, a critical asset to my company's future, being treated like garbage by someone who couldn't see past their own miserable prejudice. Firing her wasn't just justice, Bella. It was an absolute business necessity. Because if you had walked out of this airport today in handcuffs, or even just went home in disgust, I would have lost the most valuable piece of tech this industry has seen in a decade. The roar of the jet engines grew louder as the plane began its long taxi toward the runway. Bella looked down at his hands, calloused from hours working the warehouse night shifts, and then out the window at the sprawling expanse of the airport he was leaving behind. He had walked into Terminal 4 as a struggling student fighting for a chance. He was taking off as a tech prodigy, holding the keys to a multi-million-dollar empire. Gwendolyn walked through the cabin, performing her final safety checks. She paused by Bella's suite, giving him a warm, reassuring smile. "Make sure your seatbelt is fastened tight, Mr. Hayes. We're cleared for takeoff." Bella reached down, feeling the heavy metal buckle click into place. He looked across the aisle at William Danvers, who was already opening a sleek silver laptop, diving into his work. "Thank you, Mr. Danvers," Bella said, his voice resolute and clear. Imposter syndrome completely burned away by the fires of the morning's ordeal. "I'm ready for Seattle." Danvers looked up, a satisfied grin spreading across his face. "I have no doubt about that, Bella. No doubt at all. Let's get to work." As the Boeing 777 roared down the runway, pinning Bella back against the luxurious leather seat, the harsh gravity of his old life finally let go, lifting him into a sky full of limitless possibilities. The karma had been swift, the justice absolute, and for the brilliant young man from Brooklyn, the journey was only just beginning. The descent into Seattle-Tacoma International Airport was remarkably smooth, the massive Boeing 777 slicing effortlessly through the thick gray blanket of Pacific Northwest clouds. Inside the first-class cabin, Bella Hayes was experiencing a profound paradigm shift. The last 5 hours had been a whirlwind of high-level corporate strategy. William Danvers hadn't just treated him as a passenger, he had treated him as a peer. They had pored over the architectural schematics of Vertex Innovations' global server network, with Bella pointing out the exact bottlenecks his algorithm would obliterate. As the wheels touched down on the tarmac with a heavy, satisfying screech, the cabin's mandatory Wi-Fi blackout lifted. Almost instantly, Bella's phone, resting on the mahogany console, began to vibrate. It didn't just vibrate once or twice. It began a sustained, aggressive seizure. The screen lit up with a cascading waterfall of notifications, dozens of missed calls, hundreds of text messages, and a terrifying number of social media alerts flooded the lock screen faster than his processor could render them. Bella frowned, picking up the device. He unlocked it, tapping into his text messages. The first was from his mother, sent 3 hours ago. "Bella, honey, are you okay? I just saw the video. Please call me the second you land." The second was from his best friend, David. "Bro, you're literally the #1 trending topic in the country right now. CNN is talking about you." A cold spike of dread shot through Bella's veins. He quickly opened X, the social media app formerly known as Twitter. He didn't even have to search his name. Sitting squarely at the top of the trending sidebar, boasting over 4.2 million posts, was the hashtag #Meridian Airlines Racism, immediately followed by #Fire Brenda and #Bella Hayes. With a trembling thumb, Bella clicked the top link. It was a video posted by a user named @TravelerJohn99, a passenger who had been standing in the Group 2 boarding lane at JFK. The video was crisp, shot in 4K resolution, and captured the entire, agonizing 10-minute confrontation at Gate B22. It caught Brenda's sneering, condescending tone. It caught her physically blocking Bella. It caught the arrival of Officer Jenkins. And, most importantly, it captured the exact, glorious moment William Danvers dropped his titanium CEO badge onto the counter and dismantled her career. Bella watched the view count on the video tick upward in real time. It was at 28 million views. It had only been posted 5 hours ago. "Mr. Danvers, Bella said, his voice tight. He held the phone across the aisle. You need to see this. Danvers, who was currently repacking his sleek silver laptop, looked over. He took the phone from Bella's hand and watched the video in silence. As the clip played, Danvers' expression hardened into a mask of pure, unadulterated executive fury. He didn't look angry at the person filming. He looked utterly disgusted by the undeniable, high-definition proof of his employee's bigotry. "Gwendolyn!" Danvers called out, not taking his eyes off the screen. The lead flight attendant appeared instantly. "Yes, Mr. Danvers? I need you to contact the flight deck. Tell Captain Miller to radio ground control and have our private black car pulled directly onto the tarmac at Gate 40. We are bypassing the main terminal entirely. The press is likely swarming the arrival gates." "Right away, sir." Danvers handed the phone back to Bella. He took a deep breath, smoothing the lapels of his midnight blue suit. "Well, Bella, it appears the universe has a rather aggressive sense of humor. We are no longer just dealing with a private corporate acquisition. We are navigating a global public relations hurricane." "Is this going to affect the deal?" Bella asked, panic edging into his voice. "Does Vertex still want the algorithm?" Danvers looked at him, a fierce, protective glint in his eye. "Affect the deal? Bella, this guarantees it. Vertex Innovations is currently watching the man who holds the keys to their future get martyred on national television by an ignorant gate agent. They are going to throw so much money at you to make sure your name is permanently associated with their brand's commitment to diversity and innovation that your head will spin. But first, we have to handle the fallout." Danvers pulled his own phone from his pocket and hit a speed dial number. "Sarah." "Yes, I know. I've seen it. Listen to me very carefully. I want a press release drafted in the next 10 minutes. Meridian Airlines formally apologizes to Mr. Beja Hayes. We denounce all forms of racial profiling. Confirm that Brenda Carmichael was terminated with cause immediately upon the incident's conclusion. Furthermore, release a statement saying we are launching a full, independent audit of all passenger discrimination complaints filed over the last 5 years." He paused, listening to the head of HR on the other end. A ruthless smile played on his lips. "The union? Arthur Pendleton is threatening a strike over a wrongful termination? Let him. In fact, tell Arthur I highly encourage him to hold a press conference defending her. Let him stand in front of 30 million people and explain why checking a black teenager's ID 3 times and calling armed security constitutes standard protocol. He'll be stepping down as union head by midnight." As the plane taxied to a halt, Bella felt a strange sense of vindication wash over him. The humiliation he had felt at JFK was entirely gone, replaced by the awe-inspiring reality of absolute, unyielding karma. Brenda Carmichael hadn't just lost her job. She had broadcast her own vicious prejudice to the entire world. She was unemployable. She was a pariah. The heavy cabin doors opened, and a set of private mobile stairs was rolled up to the aircraft. Waiting at the bottom, engines idling against the chill Seattle wind, was a massive black SUV. Bella grabbed his canvas backpack. He stepped out of the aircraft and breathed in the sharp, pine-scented air of the Pacific Northwest. He pulled out his phone and quickly dialed his mother's number. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with tears. "Mom," Bella said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm okay. I'm in Seattle. I'm with the CEO. Mom, everything is going to change today. I promise you. Go to the hospital. Tell them we're paying the balance in full by the end of the week." The headquarters of Vertex Innovations rose like a fortress of glass and steel, hidden among the evergreen forests outside Bellevue. As the black SUV descended into the executive garage, Bella felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. This wasn't just a meeting, it was everything. At the private elevator, they were greeted by Dr. Harrison Croft, whose excitement was impossible to contain. "Bella, your work is extraordinary," he said, launching into praise about the algorithm's elegance. Bella smiled, slightly overwhelmed, while William Danvers calmly steered them upstairs. A quiet warning followed. Richard Sterling wasn't pleased and intended to push hard. The boardroom was vast, bathed in natural light, with powerful executives seated around a polished marble table. At the center sat Sterling, his sharp gaze immediately sizing Bella up with open skepticism. "Your algorithm is interesting," Sterling said coolly, "but unproven." Bella felt the familiar sting, but this time he didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, took the stylus, and began mapping his system across the glass board. His explanation was precise, confident, undeniable. What others saw as risk, he revealed as exponential power. When the simulation results appeared, billions of data points processed flawlessly, the room fell silent. Danvers leaned forward. "We secure this now." "5 million, Sterling offered. "No," Bella replied instantly. The room froze. With calm certainty, Bella laid out his terms. 25 million upfront, royalties, a leadership role, and a scholarship fund. Sterling bristled, but Danvers slid a phone across the table. Public opinion was already shifting. This time, Bella wasn't asking for a seat at the table. He was redefining its value. It was Brenda Carmichael. She was standing on her front porch in Queens, surrounded by reporters, sobbing hysterically. She was trying to play the victim, claiming she was confused by the system, that the video was edited, that she was receiving death threats. But the reporters weren't buying it. They were hounding her, reading the newly released Port Authority report that completely exonerated Bella and detailed her horrific behavior. Her life was entirely, irrevocably ruined by her own hubris. "The world is watching Bella Hayes right now, Richard," Danvers said quietly, the deadly executive tone returning. "If he walks out of this building and tweets that Vertex Innovations tried to lowball him after he survived a racially motivated attack at an airport, our stock will drop 10 points before the market closes. If we give him exactly what he wants, we aren't just buying the greatest algorithm of the decade, we are buying a public relations victory that money simply cannot buy." Sterling looked at the phone, looked at Bella's unyielding posture, and finally looked at Danvers. He knew he was beaten. "Draw up the paperwork," Sterling grumbled to the corporate lawyer sitting quietly in the corner. 2 hours later, Bella Hayes sat in a plush leather chair in William Danvers's private office. The ink on the 50-page contract was dry. He was officially a multimillionaire. He was the lead architect of Vertex Innovations. He had secured the future of his family, and the futures of hundreds of kids from his neighborhood who just needed a chance to prove their brilliance. Danvers poured 2 glasses of expensive sparkling water, handing one to Bella. "To the future, Mr. Hayes?" Danvers smiled, raising his glass. Bella clinked his glass against the CEO's, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the sprawling, magnificent Seattle skyline. The storm clouds had broken, and the late afternoon sun was reflecting off the glass towers. "To the future, Mr. Danvers," Bella replied softly. Bella Hayes' story transcends the boundaries of a viral airport confrontation. It is a profound testament to the undeniable power of resilience in the face of systemic bias. In a world quick to judge based on appearances and preconceived notions, Bella proved that true brilliance cannot be silenced by bigotry. The devastating karma that dismantled Brenda Carmichael's career served as a stark, real-world reminder that prejudice carries a heavy, inevitable toll. Through the unexpected alliance with William Danvers, Bella didn't just escape an unjust system, he conquered it entirely, turning a moment of extreme public humiliation into a springboard for generational wealth and technological revolution. Ultimately, his journey from a marginalized college student in Brooklyn to a multi-million-dollar tech architect stands as a beacon of hope. It proves that when undeniable talent meets unyielding courage, the glass ceilings of society don't just crack, they shatter completely.